wonderful young Dems that have been doing work across the country. So some of you know me, some of you know me well, and some of you know me not so well. You know that I care about LGBTQIA issues in San Diego North County, and I care about empowering youth. And I'm not alone. We have some really awesome people from across the county. So I'm North Inland. We have Luke from North Coastal. We have Marianne. We have Danny from Metro West. And then these two panelists, I'm going to be honest, I don't know your areas. So go ahead.
I'm from UCSD. I'm from UCSD.
So you're Metro West. Yes, welcome.
South Bay.
Perfect. So this is Marianne from South Bay, and this is Sparky from UCSD Metro West. So we have a really rounded panel here. So we're going to talk about what does it look like to make space in the Democratic Party for youth, right? So all of us collectively are the stewards of today, but we're also the protectors of tomorrow. So what does that look like when we bridge intergenerational divides? And what does it look like to share power and transition power? So I'm really excited to see these texts that will talk about their process for finding a place in the party and finding a voice and a shared voice more important. So if we can start with you, Marianne, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about the issue of the spark that got you involved with Democratic politics?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Marianne DelaTorre. I'm from National City, South Bay, representing. I was previously an associate member on the platform committee at the South Area Caucus. And then I'm also a member of the API Dems as well. So I actually got my start in Democratic campaigns through being a college student. So I was at UCSD at the time, and I so happened to meet Councilwoman Alejandra Solis, who later became mayor. And so it was through the cross-cultural center. I seen her on a panel. I was like, oh my God, that's my councilwoman. And she's like, work for me in my campaign. And so from then on, it sparked a lot of interest, and I got involved with the party even more so. And then as a result, I worked with different council members or different council elections in National City, as well as promoting and fostering pipelines, leadership pipelines for Asian American candidates as well, which is really important in National City. As many of you know, it's a Filipino town. Yeah, so glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luke Tesluk. I'm the president of North County San Diego Young Democrats. It includes everyone from Oceanside and Sanitas, Vista, and Carlsbad. So one of my first memories is actually seeing the headline, "Finally It's Bush" in 2000. And I was in the first grade, and that distinctly stands out to me that elections had consequences. In college, I went to Sonoma State, and I was involved in the California State Student Association, opposing cuts to higher education. I was seeing a lot of my friends' tuition go up, being unable to afford school. I became a delegate for the California Democratic Party in 2019, and what I found was a lot of people weren't aware of how to get involved and make a difference in the state party. I myself included, I wasn't aware of how to write a resolution or joining a caucus. So I drafted an unofficial manual and worked with Young Dems to get it out to over 200 people statewide. And for me, I wanted to help be that link between people getting involved and people being able to make a difference. And I'm also a member of the North Coastal Caucus.
Well, I'm Sparky Mitra, and I'm the outgoing president of the UCSD College Dems. I also am a member of the College Dems of America, but I really got involved in politics because I'm actually from Texas. So I came to San Diego. I came to San Diego for college, and I am so excited to make it my forever home. In a couple years, I'm moving and then coming back. But I'm from Texas, and right around when I was entering college, we saw the heartbeat bill and then like a full-on abortion ban, and that's what really got me involved. I was also focusing a lot on gun violence prevention when I was in Texas, and making sure that even if it's little steps, we're really pushing as much as possible any legislation to make sure that students are safe in schools and communities are safe just in general. So that's kind of what got me into the political sphere. I also was involved in like Beto O'Rourke's first senatorial campaign, and just seeing that and then transitioning into San Diego and seeing like what great work San Diego has done and what great progress has been made in like my lifetime. In San Diego, and just learning about the history and how far San Diego has come has made me very, very hopeful of a state like Texas and San Diego and how much further we can go in the future. And I'm just super excited to be a part of like the generation that's hopefully setting us up for success.
Hey guys, everyone, how is everyone doing? Awesome. My name is Danny Avita. I am the president of the Downtown Democratic Club, also in my final year at San Diego State. A little bit about myself. I got started canvassing with Alliance San Diego. I don't know if most of you guys know who they are, but they do amazing work in the community, both in civic engagement opportunities, but also in independent expenditures. So that's how I got started learning about PACs and how to get involved in different PACs. And then started to branch out and run campaigns for different women candidates who are first-time candidates that don't necessarily know how to get into politics. And so I think one of my biggest things is uplifting and supporting women candidates all throughout the state and the nation. And really what got me involved was, I think I started out as a drug alcohol counselor, and I realized that one-on-one work wasn't doing it for me. I think it was a big call for me to really get involved at a bigger level. And it's not national politics that I'm involved in. It's not state politics that I'm involved in. I think it's the local stuff that really drives me. The local stuff that really makes me want to contribute more and more to our community. We have a beautiful community. And I think that was really the passion inside me to work on a bigger level, more than one-on-one. So I've had my fair share of challenges as a foster youth. I currently serve as a tutor for foster youth for the county, and I'm also a delegate to the California Democratic State Central Committee, just elected a couple of months ago. So I'm looking forward to that, along with Justin as well. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself, and we'll get into a little bit more.
Yes. So to be efficient with time, let's get into it. We know that our young Dem base is disillusioned and we're in a slump. We have seen lower numbers in our clubs and we've seen lower numbers of youth in our spaces. What are we supposed to do about it, and how are we going to activate and mobilize youth going into an election year? More importantly, how are we going to retain them after the election, right? So what are some strategies that my wonderful panelists have used that have not only gotten people to come back to your clubs, but what have kept you going? Because I know as young Dems, we all know we have bad days where we have to walk away, where we're angry, where we're upset, where we don't understand what's going on. What's that thing that gets you to come back, that message, and how does that message translate to others? Who would like to start? Danny, you're talking.
All right. So I run the Downtown Democratic Club, and as you guys know, downtown isn't known for having as much young people as I'd like. So it is a bit difficult for me to engage the youth. So I begin to find different ways to really engage them, utilizing every aspect of my experience as a student, my experience as a foster youth, to really make sure that those that are in marginalized communities have a chance to get involved at a bigger level. And I think utilizing my efforts on school, I'm an advisor to the AS elections that they run on campus. So making sure that we're cultivating leaders in the university space. And then from those leaders, what I did this year is I talked to all the losing candidates, because there's so many more ways to get involved than just school. So making sure that they know those resources outside of the campus environment, really making sure that they know about running for central committee in certain things, and making sure that they can run as a delegate for the state party. So making sure that they know, educating those in those spaces. So first I have to get involved in AS, I have to get involved as a consultant for the leadership program. Currently I'm teaching for the leadership minor, which is really engaging folks on all types of levels, making sure that they know how to consult and cultivate leaders in their own time, in their own space. So really trying to make sure that they have the skills and needs to know about leadership, the different styles of leadership, And then moving forward, educating them on the different opportunities like the Downtown Democratic Club and holding different social events that they can come to. So I think that is kind of where I am at in terms of educating them, talking at both UCSD, SDSU, for the political departments, letting them know about Central Committee, let them know about delegations, so that they have the opportunity, the resources to get involved.
But expanding on opportunity, Sparky, I know you talked about a little bit that transition you're going through, moving out of UCSD. What keeps you going, even though you know that things are going to shake up? What's that spark?
I think the thing that really keeps me going is the fact that like my voice is my currency, and it's really how I have interactions with people. It's really how I make sure that I'm consistently involved in spaces, and it's really the thing that keeps me going. So, if as long as I know that my voice is being heard, I will show up. And I think that's the case for a lot of members, youth members of our community, is that we don't know where to show up where we're heard. We don't know what those places are. And so just even being that resource and telling us and just reaching out to youth community members, whether it's high schools, colleges, CCs in your area, other vocational programs, or even just workers, it's so important that students know and you young people know where the resources are and where their needs are heard. I also think that being from Texas, I am someone who really values connections beyond like the partisan space. And I think being a part of the Democratic Party, this is a really great place for community, but it's not the place where everyone wants to start their process and start their activism or advocacy work. So I think that finding those unexpected allies in unexpected spaces is something that I really valued as well as a young member, and even finding young people whose parents don't necessarily get involved in these spaces, and young people who themselves are disillusioned with the political process, but not necessarily disillusioned with helping themselves and helping other young people around them, is another thing that really keeps me going. And that can be anything from providing resources on reproductive health care, that can be really helping us help other young people, but also of course bringing them into the space, into the fold, into the Democratic Party, where they're attending club meetings and they're making sure that there's platform points that are addressing their needs, whether it comes to like tuition. We always talk about that, but making sure that their voices are at the forefront of that. There's like some really great organizations in the San Diego area, like San Diego for Gun Violence Prevention, where even if the main cohort of that organization is not a young cohort, they center young youth voices, and they really make sure that at the San Diego Unified School District's youth student board member is really centered when they're talking about it, and they're making sure that that student board member's voice is heard and they're really speaking to them. So I think just making sure that we're being heard is the first step to making sure that we're coming out and we're really involved in the Democratic Party at large.
You're gonna have the next question. I love it. Moving on to Luke here. Luke, you've been a real trailblazer in the CDP and the local SDCDP. Thank you. And so you really started to master understanding those spaces where people can speak. So would you like to expand a little bit on Sparky's point?
Absolutely. And Sparky and Jenny, I think you both spoke to getting people connected to the resources and into these different kind of governing bodies in a way. And, you know, I think back to 2018, I was the data manager for Flip the 49. We were looking at a UCSD focused strategy, building on much of the work of SOVOC, the Student Outreach and Voting Program, the UCSD Dems. And we were looking at the data and kind of just looking at turnout numbers first. And, you know, the numbers were kind of low for people our age. We were diving deep where we realized that one, we need to have a really meaningful conversation. And maybe we weren't looking close enough. The only place we were looking at were just on campus, not off campus. So we needed really a new approach. And it was going to be more than just registering people. We were going to go to dorms. We're also going to talk to people about how to get involved as well and say, hey, there's a means to volunteer too. And I think that's so important, giving people a chance to make a difference and be engaged that way. And I hope to be that link. And, you know, at the KDM level, just, it can be crazy. I remember going to my first e-board meeting at Sacramento, just walking around, not knowing what was going on really. And I just kept thinking, you know, I don't want other people to have this experience. I want people to be able to walk in and, you know, kind of into the space and empower people to make a difference. So, you know, just providing the resource for delegates when I've done, looking at either the resolution, you know, handing out draft resolutions or just kind of giving info on the caucuses. I'm glad to be able to partner with some local and divisible groups to talk to people and young Dems about how to do that. I think it's extremely important kind of having that party and activism 101, but most importantly, giving people the action opportunity needs to do that.
And then, Marianne, we're gonna conclude this question with you. You talked about something interesting in your intro. You talked about the Filipino community in your local area. I am a very white presenting Filipino, but I can tell you that our community, our young people tend to be very active, but they don't tend to be active in political spaces. What has that journey looked like for you in terms of getting resources to our community and your neighbors?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I really have to say, when we come from disenfranchised voter communities, right? Voting, getting them out is extremely difficult, and we see that time and time again in national cities where we see low voter turnout. So something that I've done, especially within our own youth from both brown and Black communities, is thinking about mentorship. Right. So I wouldn't be in this space if it hadn't been for mentorship, for being identified, for being, empowered to be here, and also just really in terms of level setting a lot of the expectations around the party, right? Canvassing, how do you talk to folks at the door, right? Which is an opportunity, by the way, for interpersonal skills for our youth, right? How do you go about fundraising, event organization, different aspects like that, that a lot of folks had, I had been introduced to. So I would say, as you think about, navigating spaces that are more just like empowering youth is extremely difficult, just given the fact that they tend to have reservations, but they are so powerful. We don't talk about it enough, right? I mean, it's a testament, right? And so what's beautiful about this generation, I have to say, especially amongst our youth of color, is that they are so progressive and they are so critical, I think, far more than I had been when I was in high school, right? And there is an opportunity right now to, identify them, get them in there, mentor them, and then have them be retained within the party to ensure that they are, part of the work that we're doing, mobilizing our communities.
So you all are reading my mind, and this brings me to my next question. And this is the meat that I think is going to be really valuable for everyone here. The Democratic Party is a coalition of people who have been the vanguard for 20, 30 plus years, and people who are just beginning. And that currency that we have, mentors, the people who introduce us to the party, the people who guide us through very complex issues. What do all of you look for in a mentor? And what are some of the things that have changed in what you looked for in a mentor from when you began to where you are now? Give you a moment to think about that. And I encourage all of us to think about that. Every single person in this room has somebody that's brought you into the party. We didn't all just wander here by happenstance or, show up out of thin air. We all know somebody who brought us. But what does that look like? What does that look like for you? What do you expect from you? What do the youth expect from us? Because if we want to talk about real empowerment, we have to think about that, right? What side of the equation wants what? You ready? Danny, would you like to go?
Sure, I can start again. I think mentorship is a really great topic, especially in making sure that youth have an opportunity to open doors. So one thing off the bat I will say is I'm asking all of you today to become mentors to someone in your life and someone in your space, environment that really needs it. Most especially focusing on marginalized communities, people of color, foster youth. What I looked for in a mentor before 2020 was someone that had ear to the ground, someone that knew what was going on in the streets. I had a real passion for criminal justice. So one of my beginning mentors that brought me into this party was Tasha Williamson. As you guys know, she's a great advocate for criminal justice reform, and she does an amazing job in keeping police accountable. So I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's her. I want her to mentor me. And we did. We got into the party. The party wasn't as accepting of me at the time. They actually got rid of me in one of the first meetings. But that drove me to that anger, something that Richard said in another panel earlier, is that the anger, let that anger drive you. that is something that has been so useful to me as a young person getting involved in politics, has faced adversity at every angle. But today I think I look for someone that is willing to be there, someone that is willing to hear me out, listen to where I'm going, and tell me, okay, this is where you need to fix some things. I need someone to be real with me. And I think Lori Saldana in the back right there has been a real bit advocate in helping to find youth and educating them and making sure that they have the opportunities to really thrive in the party and educating them on certain things that might not necessarily be as popular or as less controversial. So getting into these spaces and having a voice is going to be the biggest thing. So people that are allowing me to have that voice is it's just so important. So pushing that on you guys. I hope you guys can do that.
I think I completely agree with Danny. I think that having someone who's real with you is super, super important. I think a lot of times you're told, oh, we're so proud of you. We're so excited that you're here, but that doesn't really help us. Being proud of us is one thing, but working with us and being proud of working with us rather than being proud of us is so, so important. I think in a mentor, I look for very kind of a couple things. Of course, that like kindness and that willingness to stand with you, as Danny mentioned, and work with you, even when you're not really feeling the best about yourself. But also looking at someone who is very willing to provide concrete skills. I think that right now, youth, a lot of the times they have all this energy, but they don't know how to channel it. We always hear about like the Democratic Party and we're told to like go out and vote, but beyond that, how can we get involved? And these are great spaces and great ways to get involved within the Democratic Party. Whether that's like working on a committee or getting elected to like ADEM, there's so many ways to get involved as youth that we're just not aware of, or at least most of us aren't aware of. And I think that having a mentor who's really willing to be specific about how you can help the party, how youth can really be there for the community, is something that I've really looked for in mentors, and I found great mentors in the San Diego region who really helped me with that process. And I think that that's something that I would love to see going forward for mentors elsewhere as well.
Luke, I feel like you and I have both been very spoiled by Rob Howard, so I'm very curious to see where you're going with this.
Definitely. No, I think Danny and Sparky both said it really well, man. Yeah, Justin and I have worked with Rob Howard in North County, who's taught us so much. I don't think we'd be sitting here today if it wasn't without Rob and everything. And just someone who I think, you know, invests the time for us, works with us, you know, and holds us accountable when the time comes when that needs to be done, and also kind of sees the potential in us, willing to invest the time. You know, during Rob's campaigns, we were always up in the front, listening to us and talking to us, involving us in these things. And at times telling us maybe we shouldn't do things sometimes, and just building off things, and yeah, kind of that intentionality, willing to invest the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can really say, you know, as a woman of color, especially an Asian American woman, it's very rare to see us, especially in politics, for some reason, one way or another, right? And so for me, I had a lot of imposter syndrome coming into this space, and I was just so fortunate to meet, you know, other people of color, other women, you know, who took the time to really get coffee with me, learn more about me, listen intently, right, and also share their experiences, their own journey, right, and that really empowered me to, you know, stay in the space, be involved with other, you know, campaigns, be a campaign manager. I never saw myself being a campaign manager for Jen in Imperial Beach, but it happened. But because I saw women, you know, and by the way, Jen Crumley was the first Asian American woman to run for city council in Imperial Beach. So historic, you know, historic figures in the space really cultivated me, and I see Michelle Krug as well here. So Michelle is a rite of passage to the Democratic Party, I have to say. So she is the party. So many conversations with Michelle. Michelle will call me up. She's like, Marianne, and you know, just listening to Michelle taking her guidance. She told me that I could never use enough clipboards in my life because I did everything on my phone. Things like that, they took the time to, to speak to me, to give me, life advice. And as a result, I'm still here. And also just checking in. I want to note, politics, policy making is hard on the soul. It's hard on the heart because you care so much, right? As a person of color, it's even deeper, right? With all the levels of equity work that you want to see within your community, within the party, within, individuals that you connect with. And I want to note that checking in with folks, how are you feeling? How does that make you feel? Providing them that space of psychological safety is really key to retaining youth. And as all of my colleagues, incredible leaders here have mentioned. So that's how I'll finish off.
Thank you. So all of you will indulge me for a minute. I'm going to show you what empowerment looks like. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Just raise your hand honestly. I can also indulge me too. Raise your hand if you've ever walked into a meeting, a Democratic meeting, or a city council meeting, or a school board meeting, or whatever, and you felt uncertain about what you're there for, or what's going to happen, or what you're even going to say. Have you ever felt anxiety? Raise your hand. Yeah, let's be real. All of us have. Raise your hand if you've ever wondered, am I advocating for the right thing? Am I working with the right people? What am I doing and how am I using my time? Anyone felt that way? Right? Sometimes we have those moments of doubt. The point I'm trying to make here is that everyone in this room understands that the biggest thing we have in politics, our biggest political currency, is relationships. And sometimes we'll make mistakes, or we'll fight and think that we're fighting the good fight, and then we'll reflect after something's happened and say, oof, what was the cost of that action? And so I asked the mentor question from all of us, because as young Dems, the way that we empower ourselves and get empowered by other people who have been in the trenches is learning to figure out when we've made mistakes and how to come back, how to make room for real conversations and restorative growth, right? How many of us have been blacklisted or pushed out of the party because we were on the wrong side of history for whatever reason, or maybe we just didn't think too critically about an issue. But the only way forward is if we make space to talk to each other, to say, you know what, I didn't understand where you were coming from that perspective, but I get that you love your community and I love my community too. That's what we need in mentors. We can be our own mentors, but all of you can be our mentors too. You got a question?
Just Democrat for 50 years. It's in a lot of elections all over the country. And I think some of the members in the clubs that I've seen over the last 15 years are afraid to disagree with someone else, right? To have their own opinion. And I don't know how to encourage them. If you have a disagreement, for you don't know who you're talking to or something. To let them have whatever it is that they have to offer and not to jump on it, because it sounds like something different than they expect to say. I don't know if it ties into what you're doing.
How many of you have been in a central committee meeting? Okay, so you know where I'm going with this. How many of you have seen a fight in a central committee? Yeah, raise your hand. Yeah, exactly. And the point of routine. So your question, to go back to that, how to have a conversation, I'm going to tell all of you this. It is not during a central committee meeting. You can fight about issues, but the minute it becomes more than that, because remember the point I'm trying to make, our most valuable currency is our relationships. I know that I don't have to agree with everyone in this room, and I know everyone in this room don't agree with me. But if I need to organize people to come to my school board, I can dial up Olga Diaz, however you feel about Olga Diaz. I can dial up Rob Howard. I can dial up Esther Sanchez. I can dial up all of these different people that might have contradictory, conflicting viewpoints, but they all agree that our schools should be safe for everyone. They all agree that queer literature should be in schools, and they all agree that we have a fundamental right to exist, right? And that's what you do. You have to be able to have that emotional space and trust in yourself and other people to have one-on-one conversations, to be like, hey, I don't understand your vote and it hurt me. And I want to understand why you voted this way. What was the cost and how can we help each other with the bigger issue? All right, let's go.
In our club, in Poway, George Floyd really brought, like, we had kids on the streets of Poway holding signs, and I saw the spark and the active. They wanted to engage. There was a topic that they, wanted to participate in, and I feel like our club lost. We didn't engage in that. We didn't connect with them. We we didn't take that spark or that moment. A couple people did come to our club and they saw us as inactive, right? Like they saw us as like, oh, you're not trying to do anything anytime quickly. And so I felt like, oh, like we missed out on a moment. And so I guess I'm looking for a little bit of feedback of like, when we see the spark and engagement and energy, how do we meet that moment appropriately to engage and to bring them in and be able to possibly be a mentor, right? Like, because they're already active.
Which one of you would like to start? What do you want in a panel, or what do you want in somebody that's coming to you for emotional and physical labor for an activist cause like George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, or any sort of criminal justice? What's the messaging that gets through to you that gets you to show up?
Something that I think ties into both your guys' question is the need for humility upon a mentor's understanding and interaction with others. One of the biggest fears that I had when I was approaching folks to become a mentor is the anxiety that someone will shut me down. And so when you have that type of acceptance that comes along with understanding, having empathy with that person, understanding they might not know all about the topic, but having that dialogue. And I think what you're talking about is once you see that interaction and once you see that spark of joy and interaction that they want to get involved, find what they're best suited for. It doesn't have to be what they're best suited for, challenge them sometimes, but find what they're best suited at, give them an action, tie them into something that is relatable to what you're talking about. I was having a conversation the other day with someone that about campaign finance reform. And I'm not the most savvy on campaign finance reform. I try to stay up to date, but I was speaking to someone about this, and he had mentioned that there was this platform for me to get involved on that level. And so I dialed him up, and so we're now in touch almost every other week. So it's something that, build those connections on those relationships, but be open and be understanding when you realize that this person might not be talking about something correct or in a correct way. So I think having that acceptance is really important. And having a council of folks. I have a council of folks like Justin just talked about. He can call up Esther, he can call up Howard. I also have a council of folks. I can call up Lori, I can call up Tasha. There's different people on my council that I talk to that if I'm dealing with an issue, I am going to come to them and ask them for help because I know that they're going to hear me out, have that empathy to understand where I'm coming from, and then be accepting, and then filter into wherever I need to go.
Sparky, and we do need to move a little quicker, and then we'll get to more questions.
No. Really quickly here. I before coming into the party, I was on the same boat. It was really being activated by, criminal justice, police accountability, transparency. So I found myself, I had a council member, he had listened to me. He was like, he had seen the activation in me, and he had encouraged me to join the Community Police Relations Commission in National City, right? We don't understand that boards and commission spaces are powerful, and you deserve to sit on there. I want to recognize one of my colleagues who's a commissioner as well here, Zachary Gomez, on the National City Community Police Relations Commission, and somehow I found myself as a vice chair. Right, and so because of that, right, that same council member who was part of the Democratic Party, he was like, we need your thought process, your experiences, right, from what you've learned on the commission space into the South Area Caucus for the platform committee, right? So it's things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to start with the party because you'll get them there, right? But it's fostering the opportunities, right, as Danny mentioned, right, whether it's coming to the city council meeting, right? Like I like to tell people, if you can write a tweet, if you can write a Facebook post, you can write public comment, right? And having them go into those different opportunities, connecting them to different people. I remember that same council member, Marcus Bush, if you are listening, it's you. Marcus Bush had introduced me to different types of leaders in the space on criminal justice reform. And so that really got me, motivated, and then it helped me, stick to the party. So just some ideas there as well. So, yeah.
Sparky.
Yes, I think that, first of all, yes, I totally agree with everything that was said. I think that also just making sure that when a lot of times, as Danny was mentioning, like having that courage to reach out to mentors. I know for a fact that I'm someone who didn't actively reach out to mentors. So my first mentors in the San Diego community are people who reached out to me. And I think that I've become better at it. So I do reach out to people now, but initially when I was talking with people, it was them reaching out to me and them talking with me and them holding me accountable. And I think that that's something that kept me going, and that's something that's kept me going. Like, even if something hard for me to hear, I will reach back out to you, because that's what I needed to hear at that moment. If I'm not activating my community, if I'm not activating UCSD Dems for a certain cause. I think that also just making sure that kind of having people who had that energy after George Floyd and protests related to that event, just making sure they really are educated about what's happening on the local level and then all throughout. But I think a lot of times youth are not in the know about exactly what legislation looks like, or what certain policies look like, or what party things can change, and making sure that they know exactly what is happening with relation to this. It sometimes seems like not a lot is being done because they don't know what's being done. And so just making sure that there is an active effort within even club meetings, even if there's one young person there, making sure that they know exactly what's happening.
Sure. So I think all of you said this really well, and to speak to that, I think in terms of people, lighting their spark, talking to people, listening, finding out what they're interested in, what are their passions, what would they like to do, and again, providing and looking for those opportunities as well. I know in North County, we've got a number of things. Just you're part of this. One of our council members, Katie Melendez, we were trying to get her on Sandag, and we reached out to our clubs. We kind of developed some talking points to inform people about what we have in city council, having people help speak to that, kind of providing that means we can people the resources to do that as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up real quick because we're running out of time, and then we'll do some quick questions, but we'll probably have like one or two second responses from our panelists. That's okay. But I'm just going to say, to go back to your question, because I think we missed a part of it. How do we seize on a moment? All of us, if we're going to be honest, we've all been scared at some point about the future. We've all been worried about the future of democracy, what our access to water might be, what our homeowner rates are going to be. Am I going to be able to pay my rent or put food on the table? Or all of us have been on the receiving call of Michelle Krug because she's had valuable wisdom to impart on us, because she cares very much. I love Michelle. But the point that I'm trying to make is the way that you seize on the activist moment is you figure out why people are scared, and you give them a message to work. And I think all of us here have been scared at multiple times in our lives. I think all of us have been scared when we saw what happened with Roe v. Wade, when we've seen Trump rise to power, and the misconduct of the judiciary and the Supreme Court. We've been terrified. But the thing is, if we work together and turn our fear into hope, that's how we see someone. Sometimes it's saying George Floyd died, and that's why we're going to walk to the streets, but that's why we're going to go to city council. And here's the messaging. If you're scared, if you don't know what to say, read this message, and if it agrees with you, show up. This is where we're going to be at. You need juice boxes, you need a ride, we got you. That's how you do it, because especially young people, it's hard for us to drive everywhere, and it's very hard for us monetarily wise, because we're just starting out, and everything is getting much more expensive. A studio apartment in San Diego North Inland is $2,300 in downtown Vista. $2,300 a month. How many of you, when you were 18 or 19, could afford $2,300 a month? Not very many of us. It's very difficult. And so you seize on the moment by figuring out what the lack of resources are. Why aren't they showing up? I can't get there. I don't have any food. I don't know what to say. If you can solve those problems coming from a place of having an established club and having funds and having people who will volunteer to drive people places or to write the messaging, you've already won about 70% of the battle, right? All right, so rapid fire questions. And then
quick follow up on Sandy.
Yes.
And so you don't necessarily have to go. They have 14 different types of committees. If you pick one that you're interested in And I learn a lot when I go to these things. So the transportation thing, if you can't get there, may be an interesting thing.
Thank you. But rapid fire questions and panelists, if you have an answer ready, go ahead and answer it. If you don't, we're just gonna move on.
As a mom of a daughter who just got into UCSD, I'm very curious. You said somebody found somebody that mentored you. May I ask who that person was? Because she's hearing it from mom. She's seeing mom being political, but I'm a mom. So she needs to see it from another person. Love to see who that person was for you.
Yes, so in the San Diego community, it was definitely Michelle. Michelle has helped me a lot in the San Diego community, as well as Judy Key. And yes.
Judy Key, the legendary Judy Key.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, I went to college in the 70s and we were against the war, Vietnam War, and in the college, I'm really, this is a question. How interested are the college kids about what is going on now on campus? Are they, because I'm not in there, I don't know. It's a question.
Absolutely. So it's actually interesting that you brought that up. So when I talk with my friends, they know that I'm politically involved, but a lot of times they ask me like what I'm actually doing, and then I mention the issues that are closest to my heart, and then they're like, wait, this is not a democratic thing, this is a human right. And
So much smarter than
and so that like that's what the Democratic Party is all about, right? It's the things that we think are fundamental, things that we're entitled to, and just making sure that people know that it's not all about like partisan politics, and like that even the Democratic Party is not all about that. It's being there for people who are struggling. It's being there for students, because students have the interest. Students are passionate about all these issues. Students do show up to places when we're talking about a certain issue, whether that is funding student workers, whether that is working with students to make sure that their tuition is low enough where it's a feasible option. They do care about these issues, but they think of these as issues that are separate from us. And they think of the party as something that they don't want to be involved in. And I just don't think that that's the messaging that works with students. The messaging that works with students is talking with them about issues, because they do care about issues a lot.
So Sparky, if you'll indulge me, I want to piggyback on that real quick. And just each of our panelists, if you can do a yes or no. Before you really got involved with democratic politics or knew anything about politics, did you ever reshare a political post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? Yes or no? Danny? You ever read something and just, no, you never did? What about you, Sparky? Yeah? Luke?
A little bit, yeah.
And then what about you?
Oh, I definitely did.
I know I did.
I did.
But that's something we talk about. All politics are local. Most of us got politically activated, at least back in my day when I was in college, because I read something online that made me angry or it made me feel afraid. But those were things that were at the national level.
Yeah.
And so if you want to talk about building a coalition with your local youth, and we'll get to your question, Heather, figure out how to make your messaging more locally based about an issue. You know, we don't have people across the country that are trying to label queer people as pedophiles and rapists and ban the books. We have them right here in San Diego attacking our school board members. We have them attacking Kate Bishop in Chula Vista. We have them attacking Martha Alvarado in Vista. We have a candidate here, Darshana Patel, Dr. Darshana Patel. We have a multitude of people here that are affected by these big issues that get people fired up. And so we can literally point to them and be like, this is your champion right now, and they're under fire. Where are you gonna be at? That's how you get the youth activated.
If I might, just real quick, because I know we're probably gonna miss this part in our conversation. Get as familiar as you can with technology.
Yeah.
Technology is going to be your best friend when engaging the youth. This is something that I don't think we've talked about, but Facebook, we're not on it anymore. Instagram, we're on it. Twitter, we're on it. But utilize these resources. I just wanted to know there's a big opportunity that most people miss out on to engage people through these efforts.
Yeah, a lot of political literacy. And then other thoughts that you have.
So I do, well, it's information. So Mayor Targoria did this fabulous thing. He challenged all the high schools at the beginning of the school year to which schools get the most voter registrations. So you don't have to pre-register. You can also do it when you do your driving license. They got thousands of voter registrations in Rancho Bernardo, Poway alone. So for that goes to some of your question or what you were asking about. They all registered, but they don't know necessarily what to do about it. Well, now they've got that information. If they don't have someone going to them. So there's got to be some kind of a group that comes after that follow up. Because like I can't do it.
They need to make a local group, right? People keep sharing things they see on Instagram or Twitter all the time about misconduct. George Floyd, all of these other people who are victimized by racial violence or criminalized for happening to be a different skin color. And we get very upset about that. But that happens in our own backyard. A houseless person of color was murdered by EPD in Escondido in 2021. And we all, well, I don't know about all of y'all, but everyone in North Oakland, we all saw that video. We were all mad about it, right? These things happen in our backyard. And getting that point home to youth, especially people who are stuck here because we can't really afford to go anywhere else. And that isn't to say that we shouldn't be proud of where we're at, because I love where I'm at. And I'm sure all of y'all love where you're at now. But all politics are local. If we can learn how to use that same strategy that the national issues cover at a local level, we can make people realize that they can do effective change by just showing up to their school board or their water board or their city council. Oh, Justin?
Can I ask one, so,
Oh, sorry, real quick. Another important thing also is just supporting young Democrats who are running for office, especially at the local level. Good, so we have Councilmember Clint Contreras. So we have a Democrat majority for the first time in city's history. She won by about 33 votes. And she has done so much in the council, from things with single plastics, the environment, affordable housing. And just running for office is so tough, and we need to be there for young Dem candidates to mentor and give support and the resources they need. So just want to end with that also.
thank you. Back in 2015, I belonged to Democratic Club of Vista. We are fired up. We decided, okay, we want to get them young people. So we visited 2 colleges twice, so 4 times together. And we run a voting registration movement. These students don't care. They said, as if they're talking to used car salesman. They just avoid us. I mean, like a 5 feet away, they knew we were there, you know. Stay away from us. But anyway, I'm trying to find out, where do I find people like you, young, inspiring? Seriously, where can we find you? I mean, you guys woke up on your own, but we won't wake them up. You know what I mean?
That question, and I want to note here too, I think part of it is really listening, right? So they don't have to say, oh, I'm a Democrat, right? They, you know, they may not even realize that their values are Democratic, right? So it's listening to them intently about the issues, their opinions, what do they really care about? And then having them, you know, see the long-term effect of what voting means, right? And also the history of voting, right? When we think about the history of voting, you know, we know that it's a power and a privilege that, you know, has been disenfranchised for many communities. So having them really understand that. I also want to note, and this is why Sparky is so important and the colleagues here, is that peer support, peer connection is extremely important. Once you identify a leader, they get, and she was just talking about, she's like, oh, my friends know me as the political one, right? And then she gets to share, I'm sure many of you were like, oh, they ask you what prop they should vote on, right? Your friends, right? So things like that. So once you know, identify a leader after listening to them, they open the doors to reaching out to other youth who can get involved. And I'm sure all of my colleagues here have at least gotten someone to add to their public comment on an issue, right? I mean, Zachary and I talk, we used to talk so often on the commission and also during campaign elections to check in on each other. And as a result, you know, that was a form of, you know, not only outreach, but also retention, right? And I wouldn't be in the space if it wasn't for Zachary as a peer. So I just want to note that that's really important when you do, you know, start ensuring and in practicing youth mobilization.
So, and I'll touch on your question too, because I know the colleges you went to. That's my bread and butter back in the day. You have to understand the demographic you're working with. The kids at Palomar College, those are the poor kids. The kids that know what it's like to go hungry, the kids that have to work 3 or 4 or 5 jobs, the kids that often come from broken homes or single family homes that are having to go through hell just to get to class. And so by the time they even step foot on campus, they're tired, they're hungry, they're stressed out. And the reason why they're just trying to get to their class is because we've been told all our lives that if you go to school, if you get a college degree, that's a pathway out of poverty. And a lot of our generation has realized that that's not necessarily true. So you want to activate and mobilize youth, you want to empower youth, you need to help build pathways for them to actually be successful, to be financially independent, to have some sort of real voice or power. Because so many of us are facing unprecedented levels of poverty, ecological disaster, and just feeling like there is no hope, right? We have to build a real pathway of hope for so many of us. So many of us here, I think, have probably felt very frustrated or overwhelmed or scared during our university or our youth times trying to just survive, right? I can't imagine, Danny, how easy it is to survive in downtown San Diego. I bet it's pretty rough.
That's right.
And being a UCSD college student, I went to UCR, and let me tell you, I ate ramen, but that ramen was not enough. Yeah, but what happens when the food drive runs out? So I'm gonna share a little bit about me real quick. I used to live under a bridge here because my biological parents, about, I don't know, 10, 15 miles away from here, were meth addicts. And so I came from a very low place of privilege. I literally lived as like a 7, 8, 9-year-old under a bridge. And the way that I got lucky was I had an adoptive family that was from an upper middle class background. And, but before I got that, I put myself in college. I was very lucky because I was awarded the state and I got a degree. And then I was very sad because I realized there were no jobs. There was nothing to do. So I worked 4 or 5 jobs. I did everything that you're supposed to. And I kept fighting in the Democratic Party, even though there weren't jobs. People weren't paying me to be a campaign manager. People weren't paying me to be a DSCC delegate or whatever, or an ADEM. I realized that how hard it is for me is going to be so much harder for the people that are just starting out. The people who, you know, actually got to community college right now, their reality is so much harder than mine. And I'm alive today, and I'm grateful, but every generation in this room has had it progressively harder than the last. We're facing a collapse of our systems because we've had our government co-opted by Republicans, we've had multiple social programs defunded, and it's become increasingly hard as our economy transitions into a very aggressive, like scammers game, to be honest, to find some sort of way to put food on the table. So if you want to activate people, get them to realize we are going to create a pathway for a future. We're going to elect people that are interested in creating jobs so that way you can live where you grew up. So you can maybe own a home or at least put food on your table, you know? But if we don't do that, that's the bare minimum for empowering you. To say, hey, we're gonna show you, we're gonna help you network or build a connection or community so you can eat and do the work. Because you can't do the work if you can't feed yourself, right?
I'll touch on what you were saying. To say something that just popped up in my work through us and not above us, right?
National voter registration date is coming up on September 19th, and you can actually go to high schools and register to vote at high school. So even catch them earlier before even at the college level.
And have a pizza. If your club has money, buy a couple of pizzas and they'll come.
Food,
Right.
Food
Yeah,
is good.
Okay, 2 more questions and we gotta go because we're running out of time. Michelle Krug, I see your hand.
Yeah, I do want to know who won that contest. Oh, cool. Okay, so I just a comment about, I don't think you can like decide for people when they're ready. Like you have to just be there. The relationships, as Jonathan said, was as are the key. You've got to have those relationships, trusted relationships, respectful relationships. And then when people are ready to engage, you're there. Because you can't just, you know, say, we want to open this up to you. And it's, so anyway, I just wanted to, if we're there and we're consistently there, we consistently offer opportunities, we consistently share information instead of just saying, oh, just say yes on this, but actually share why it's important to you and let it go at that. That's how people will feel safe to come to when they are ready to engage.
But really quickly, we'll take more questions, but I want to thank each of our panelists, because each of our panelists. Time out of their day, like all of us did, to show up here and talk about their experiences. Maybe as a popular color, maybe as battle-hardened young guns. I'm looking at you. Maybe as people who have been pushed out of the party but still came back because they have bigger fights to fight. Each of us here has a story or a reason for showing up. Getting to know and understand each of us and our demographics are what's going to empower us and empower people like us. You asked about how to wake people up. That's how you wake people up. You got to realize where they're at. Those college students, they're hungry and they're tired, but you show up with a pizza, they'll talk to you. Especially because, let's be real, this woman that asked that question over here, I know who you are. You are beloved in our community. And I think every person that gets to sit down and talk to you, even for 5 minutes, walks away feeling special. And I think that's invaluable. And I wish that everybody, every college student would be so lucky as to have a slice of pizza. I love you. So thank you for all that you do. And thank you to our.
Thank you.